think about it as a business leader. If you're a 22,000 law firm, 22,000 person law firm, or if you're a 22-person law firm, if you're a 22,000 person, you're pulling in your CISO and your IT leaders and stuff and saying, what should we do for AI? Which solutions and how should we bring these things to market? What tools would you? That's who they're bringing into the room. Well, guess what? The small to medium business market, the 22-person law firm, they're doing the same thing, but it's the MSP is their technology partner and their business partner. And they're going, what should we do? How do we get ready? How should our data be formatted? What kinds of applications should we be leveraging and using? So the MSP is playing a massively, their opportunity is extraordinary to play an incredible role in the line of business applications to these companies. So anyway, it's
Welcome. We have a very honored guest to someone who's been in the industry for a long time and has had a very unique perspective as many people, well, not that many people, but as people who are in his position who run companies that have such exposure to global managed services organizations. I thought that it would be a fantastic opportunity to bring our next guest, Michael George, CEO of Syncro, onto the program to give us some of his perspective. It's been a while since we spoke, Michael. So welcome back to the MSP Zone. Good to see you.
Charles, thank you very much. Great to see you. And thanks for having me back.
I have what I hope is a very, it's a short, but I hope a very accurate biography on you so that people who are not familiar with you, if that's even possible, I'll go through this and hopefully it's accurate. Michael George is the Chief Executive Officer, as I said, of Syncro, a leading provider of integrated PSA and RMM solutions for managed service providers, has over 25 years of experience in the technology sector. Michael is known for building and scaling innovative companies that empower IT professionals and MSPs to operate more efficiently and profitably. Michael holds a degree from Suffolk University and is based in Boston, Massachusetts. How did I do?
Excellent. Lovely. It
Okay.
was flattering even. So thank you.
So we've had conversations, going back to when you headed up Continuum and went through that phenomenal thing that you did with that organization. Now you're with Syncro. I know you guys did a market study, a report. I'd like to get into some of those things, but let me just start with how have you been and how are things in your area of the MSP world?
Yeah. So we've been doing really very, very well. We've launched two new products this calendar year, which is pretty extraordinary. If you talk about the innovation curve, releasing one, not feature. I mean, we release new features every month, but major independent products in any given year is an accomplishment. We've delivered two. The first was at the end of April of this year, a product called XMM, which is the combination of our RMM PSA solution, which has now been around for a while and been very, very successful as a combined solution. Of course, integrating those two things separately, as everybody knows, is difficult. But being born in the cloud and having built those together has been very powerful. And then adding to that XMM, to create XMM is all the Microsoft management capabilities. So that was in late April. That has just gone absolutely outstanding in a number of dimensions. And I'll talk about the effects of our customer base first, and then also just the market in general, because so much of our growth has been coming from that. And then just literally a few weeks ago into general availability at the beginning of October. We always do early releases for our customers first. We prioritize them. So we have a beta program, and then we put it out in early access just for our customers, and then into general availability. So it's got some street time on it, so that we've been able to perfect it, so that by the time it hits the general market, we're not test beds for our new products. Cloud backup solution that's very specifically, Charles, in the Microsoft cloud. So it's all of the email capabilities, all of your data, but it's also Entra ID, so that we're also backing up all of your infrastructure, so that when you do a recovery, you're not recovering into a unsafe or an unconfigured environment, you're actually bringing the entire environment up, your email, your data, et cetera. And so that is literally as many weeks old as we are here in the month of October. It was October 1st was the delivery of that. And also, as an indication, the demand for these things and the lack of available tools in the market that has just gone, off the charts. We're doing really well, and this is a product, technology, and innovation led industry, and so I'm really proud of what our team has been able to deliver this year to the market.
Exciting, exciting. You and I spoke last time, I think, about you had phrased it, pardon me, value extraction versus value creation. I think talking about the impact of private equity investment into the managed services space. There seems with again the drive of some organizations, you're talking about releasing new products versus just like buying and bolting on. Do you still believe in that concept? I mean, you made a big point about it last time, and I thought it impressed me a lot.
Yeah. Well, so then let me take a minute and go just a one step further to explain the dynamic. So we talked about private equity, and you're quite right. They are in, first of all, it's a big, broad term, almost like IT is. There's so many different kinds, flavors, investment theses and models and so forth. We would be foolish to assume that they're all the same because they're not. There are, and I'll just sort of break it down quickly. There are growth equity and private equity firms. Growth equity firms are typically on the front end of innovation curves, and they are doing value creation. They understand that profitability is not as important as innovation. So they're willing to invest and get on that side of the tracks. And more than the first half of my 8-year tenure at Continuum, we were on the value creation side of the equation, and it was extraordinary. But then these markets and sometimes companies get to a point where, and in our case, we got acquired by Thoma Bravo, and we now had high growth, high profitability, all the other things that come with it, and a lot of innovation. And then a lot of times the markets get on the other side where private equity will acquire them, and it ends up becoming a little bit of a value extraction mode because they're just looking to increase your profitability so that when they can sell it to the next private equity firm, that company can also put a lot of leverage on the business. This is not to blame it on private equity, by the way, and
Yep.
I just want to go one step further. Synchro is funded by a fabulous private equity firm called Mainsail. One of the reasons I joined is they put zero debt on the firm when they acquired it. So we had and they knew this was a value creation opportunity for us. We saw something unique in the market, and it was going to require a lot of investment on our behalf, and so they signed up for that, and here we go. What happened is that if you look at the major events that took place in the industry, where the three sort of leaders now exist, that's Kaseya, ConnectWise, and Enable. First of all, Enable went public in just look at the COVID 2020, that 2020 period where, by the way, interest rates by the Federal Reserve went to zero. They were worried about the economy collapsing, and they took our Federal Reserve rate to zero. And so what happened? Continuum got acquired by ConnectWise, right? So that's one big piece. You can use a lot of debt when your interest rate is zero. Enable got spun out of SolarWinds at that period of time, and Kaseya acquired Datto. These were the three most significant events, financial events, to take place for those three companies in the industry. And they all did it between the March 15th Federal Reserve drop rate to zero. And look, so the model works great, and it was working wonderfully for those companies too. So again, this is not a private equity problem. It's really a debt problem because in the case of Kaseya, they borrowed $4 billion. In the case of ConnectWise, between that acquisition and their acquisition of Axient, they borrowed $1.7 billion. So at zero interest rates, again, you can do that all day long. But in April of 22, when the Federal Reserve unlocked it, those things were all based on variable rates. That was a condition of the lending at that time. Well, it went up, and between now prime interest rate and commercial rate, these companies are paying 10%. So
That's
10%, and by the way, I'll correct myself, the $4 billion was for the Kaseya, for the Datto acquisition alone. They have $4.4 billion worth of debt. That takes $440 million of free cash flow just to service, not pay down, but just to service the debt.
Yeah.
So if you're, I don't care how big you are, if you're spending $440 million servicing your debt, you can't, there's no money. And look, the CEOs of these companies are smart, they're terrific, they're technologists. They want to do innovation too. But when you don't have any money to do it, you can't. So anybody that's in those three legacy, and they are, let's be candid. I mean, they're all companies that got started. I was part of one of them. They're 20 and 25 years old, software, architectures, and everything else. So there's a lot of requirement for innovation. Then when you make an acquisition like ConnectWise to Continuum, like Kaseya to Datto, like getting spun out and Enables made two acquisitions in the backup and the security space, you need money to get them integrated, to get them working well and to working right, and to be on the innovation curve. Innovation is just stopped. And by the way, the Federal Reserve, if they lower it a quarter of a point or half, doesn't matter. I mean, that's not enough. These companies are really stuck servicing debt. So one of the things we're through, so that's a little further descriptive of private equity aren't the big bad guys in the business, but debt has plagued those companies, and they have just and the effects to the managed services space, Charles, has been extraordinary. I mean, all these companies that had to sign up for 3-year contracts, and the only innovation that's come out of Kaseya, of course, was the K365. I give them credit; it was the only tool they had, so they kind of packaged. That's not technology, it's pricing and packaging, and you gotta sign up for a 3-year contract. So you're kinda stuck in a company that is stuck, with no innovation. What was ConnectWise's response to K365 was ConnectWise Pro, packaging and pricing. No technology there. So this
Yep.
market, this industry is dependent, not just needs and wants. They are dependent on innovation, and that's why I joined Synchro, and that's what we're here to do and to deliver.
By the way, I love this type of discussion because I don't think it happens enough. I certainly don't talk to a lot of people who have your type of background and want to discuss I would call it economics, a 101 for the MSP space. Private equity is not the bad guy. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that the private equity coming into the managed services sector, forget the vendor tool vendors to the MSPs is one issue. The other is private equity coming into the MSPs and affording a lot of, legacy, retirement, first generation MSP business owners being able to reap their rewards and go off into the sunset. So I would love to get you back on the program and we can dive into those econ things because I find them fascinating. I want to talk about your market report. You are I want to set the stage for some of the early stage MSPs who might be watching this, which is a throwback to the yesteryear of small business exchange server, which used to be the dominant hardware software combination that really fueled a lot of MSP growth and business. That obviously went away with what eventually became Microsoft 365. I just like your high level thoughts right now on where are we with Microsoft 365 as a cornerstone? Do you view it as a cornerstone for MSP management? Are MSPs making money with it? What are your general thoughts about that product and our industry?
Yeah. So first of all, we're in the small to medium business market, right? And to your point about, wow, this is really a fascinating dynamic to understand about private equity. It's an important one to understand because of the effects that it has on our industry. And to your point, if you don't come from that world, you don't necessarily think in the macro dynamics of what is affecting this industry. You just label it like private equity is bad or this is bad. And in the same way, Microsoft, love them or hate them, and many people feel both ways about them. Microsoft is 98% of the operating system in the small to medium business market. So there is no
You can't ignore
denying
them.
you can ignore them. And if you look at the work that any technician does today in and around the small to medium business market, IT managed services world, a mass majority of the work that we're doing is in that OS, right? It's patch management. It's I mean, it's everything. I mean, I don't have to list it. The list is a mile long, and that's where they're spending all of their time and energy working on. So it is foundational and fundamental to the industry. If you look at the next level up, the next piece in and around Microsoft, of course, and for that matter, any of these players, because in the productivity suite world, it's really going to be Microsoft and Google. That's it. And in the small to medium business market, these are the two foundational productivity tools. And so now let's take a peek up to the next level in the stack. Now you have Entra ID, which is the identity level. Microsoft is number one, followed by Okta, and then not too distant, but distant enough third is Google. So that's the identity space. And why does that matter? Well, we're going to talk about security. There's only three things to secure in the world. There's your device, there's your network, and then there's your identity. And if I had to lose if you hack my device or hack my network, I'm not happy. But what could be catastrophic is if you hack somebody's identity. So Entra ID and the identity is the new battleground in and around security. That's what matters most. And we'll get back to our cloud backup product because it is protecting and securing and giving you sort of that right of boom recovery in the identity space. So then you have the productivity layer, and just getting a little bit into that for a moment, and back to paying attention to the macro dynamics. Like, a lot of people read about this stuff and they just think it's headline news and it doesn't affect them. Well, Google went and spent $32 billion on Wiz. Why did they do that? They need something to compete against Microsoft's Defender, which is the largest cybersecurity solution on the planet, by far, bar none. So now they have something to go compete against them there. But for what? And it's very simple. Both Microsoft and Google, for different reasons, are betting their companies on AI. And just taking a look at Microsoft for a moment, $14 billion investment in OpenAI. They own 49% of OpenAI. Why should any of us be surprised that at 4:18 in the afternoon on a Friday, when Sam Altman's board fired him, he showed up over the weekend as an employee at Microsoft? I mean, this is all like, just pay attention, everybody. Like, this is what's happening in the world. And so Microsoft is betting the company on AI. That's why they care. And the MSP is important because Microsoft's a channel company and they're depending on MSPs to be the delivery mechanism of those agentic solutions. Why does Google care? Because in the Google world, I mean, Charles, you and I, year and a half ago, for search, I still went to Google for most all my search. Today, I don't touch it. I mean, I go to Google maybe a couple times a week for something really simple, maybe, but
It's
everybody's
changing.
used it has changed. I mean, ChatGPT, Perplexity. I mean, you just name it, right? There's so many. I mean, that's where I go for everything, and that's where everybody is really going to work. And so I never thought in my professional career I would watch Google go on such a massive, precipitous decline in Google AdWords and everything else. So they need, I mean, their risk is or their business is in an existential threat zone with that, because everybody has gone to, these much more sophisticated search and research tools. So they have a reason to win too. So that's the macro dynamics. And then stepping down it, and, and Microsoft needs to provide the ITSM for the small to medium business. That's both direct and also indirectly, because they need the MSP. Think about it as a business leader. If you're a 22,000 law firm, 22,000 person law firm, or if you're a 22-person law firm, if you're a 22,000 person, you're pulling in your CISO and your IT leaders and stuff and saying, what should we do for AI? Which solutions and how should we bring these things to market? What tools would you? That's who they're bringing into the room. Well, guess what? The small to medium business market, the 22-person law firm, they're doing the same thing, but it's the MSP is their technology partner and their business partner. And they're going, what should we do? How do we get ready? How should our data be formatted? What kinds of applications should we be leveraging and using? So the MSP is playing a massively, their opportunity is extraordinary to play an incredible role in the line of business applications to these companies. So anyway, it is so exciting. People have asked me, "Hey, we thought you were retired and all that stuff," and it's like this would have gotten me out of my grave to come and join Sync because of this place, this time, this opportunity is so extraordinary.
Staying with the Microsoft topic, I wouldn't call as great as they are. I wouldn't call them having a cohesive strategy towards managed service providers, and at least they certainly don't make it easy for. They're not making MSP management tools, all right? They're not making tools for the MSP. That certainly must make it, given everything you just said, quite lucrative and attractive for companies like Synchro to be in that business and saying, look, we're going to take over and help you manage this labyrinth of tool sets called Microsoft.
So true. Microsoft would never have confessed to being in the small to medium business market, full stop. They are an enterprise company through and through, always have been, and largely will be. But what they also understand is that if you look at, let's take two of the largest economies in the world. If you look at the American and North American economy, it's a $33 trillion economy. 44.3% of that is small to medium businesses. If you look at the $17 trillion pan-European economy, 98% of it is small to medium businesses. So Microsoft also understands that they don't have access. They are not in those markets with anything above the operating system and, again, some level of security, but not really in any meaningful way. Their tools were never built for it, And somebody asked me about this recently, and it's like, well, it's like trying to get a penguin to fly. I mean, I know it's a bird, but they just weren't built and born to do that. We're making the penguin fly by creating multi-tenancy and making all of the critical tools that are built for the enterprise now accessible and consumable so that you can, I mean, everybody's got Microsoft licenses anyway. You're paying for them. You're just not using them to the extent that you have the ability to do. So we're making these tools. You've already got, your acquisition of it, and you're on business standard. Maybe you need to move to business premium. A lot of our customers are on business premium already anyway. But you need to activate these things. And because we have the multi-tenancy capabilities, we're enabling you to do that. So now you can take your customers and do all your baseline and policy and all of the Microsoft management capabilities are done through our console. What we have unique, because we're not the only ones, that have been able to look around the corner and see this. There are others that are pursuing this, Charles, but we're the only company on the planet that also has an integrated RMM and PSA. RMM and PSA is like air and water in the MSP space. And there is nothing in the Microsoft suite that will replace those two things. So you're still going to need them as an MSP. And one of the promises of using these tools is to reduce your tech stack. Reduce your stack, you've reduced your costs, you've reduced your complexity and everything else. The problem with all these other tools is you have to add them because you're dependent on the RMM and the PSA of these legacy vendors that are dominating the marketplace. We allow you to eliminate them. So it's also about reducing your tech stack is another way of saying, get rid of the RMM and the PSA and these other things that you're doing. And, in some cases, maybe just your RMM to have it completely integrated with your Microsoft Management Console. Now you can just start and, deploying Microsoft Defender, the Entra ID pieces, a lot of things that's just going to allow you to whittle your tech stack down into something that's centralized, more manageable. It's all integrated because it's built and based that way. It's going and 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 I know the first thing from I'm sure you're in your audience's minds and the market's mind is, yeah, but I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Well, that is true when you were dealing with the independent vendor world, the Kaseyas and the Connect, I mean, I get that, right? That's a different basket. But the fact of the matter is, as I mentioned before, your eggs are already in the Microsoft basket. So
True.
anyway, let
Point.
me, I mean, you already are. I know you don't want all your eggs in one basket, but guess what? You are already in that basket.
And Microsoft, conveniently disclaims any and all liability for anything that they may do. So, right, so all the risk is never on their shoulders. I do want to get back to something and ask if you are seeing this as a trend because and I have to be very careful here. We are seeing whether it's a small portion of highly matured MSPs, that is to say, I don't know if the less matured MSPs are following this path, but we're seeing a lot of very matured MSPs who are displacing 15, 20-year relationships with RMM and PSA solutions and moving to newer solutions, perhaps like Synchro, where they're natively cloud based. They didn't have this legacy on prem to cloud conversion. And are you seeing that? Because that's to me a very shocking thing to see very deep levels of relationship between an MSP and a vendor suddenly come to an end after that long of a period of time. And invariably we ask them, why'd you do it? And they're saying, well, because the PSA and the ticketing system, PSA and the RMM natively and nicely together. Like, first of all, are you seeing that?
It's exactly what we're seeing. Those companies are all looking to move into this category. And again, I mean nothing disparaging about some of those larger legacy players. They did a terrific job. Those relationships are largely gone. I was the founder of Continuum. I haven't been there now in 5 years. Arnie Bellini was the founder of ConnectWise. He's gone. A lot of those people are no longer there. And I think the culture, look at Datto had a great culture. We had great cultures, and my our MSP partners had direct access to me. They had direct access to people like Arnie. A lot of that stuff is gone, and it's a big generational shift for a lot of people. Not only are those leaders now gone, but the cultures in the company are now changing around the new leaders that are there. So people are experiencing that, and that connection just doesn't exist anymore. And so now you're sitting there looking at the basis of my relationship with this company in and around these tools and technologies, which, as I noted before, have not caught up from an innovation perspective whatsoever. So now it's like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing here? And
Mhm.
I'll also just make a note, because the market for the last maybe 3 or so years has been screaming for innovation. Like, we need innovation. But pay attention. What do they mean by that? Do they mean like a special feature, a new look and feel? No. What the market needs is a next generation platform. ConnectWise, Kaseya, Enable, even Ninja's 15, 16 years old. These are companies. I mean, and they're doing a perfectly fine job, but they're keeping people, you dress it up, you make a UI look good, you provide a feature-rich environment, and when you're singularly focused, you can do that. That's in the case of, let's say, a Ninja or a Halo. But they're not serving people for platforms. Ninja, by the way, for the first time made an acquisition, even though they said, we're never going to acquire anything. We know how to build everything. Sal's a product guy and everything. Well, they went out and they bought Dropsuite. Now it's a good product, but let's see about the integration. I mean, it's because that's hard work. It's different and it's hard work. But again, these are not new systems. Halo, look at Paul Hamilton, started the company 26 years ago. ConnectWise, because hey, all of them are old companies, and so what really the industry, and this is not unique in the technology field, Charles. You've been in and around it long enough to know what the market is really demanding is a next generation platform. That's what they mean by innovation. And what we've done here, and that new generation is again this ITSM that is going to be delivered by, it already is being delivered by Microsoft, but it requires this orchestration layer to make it, again, consumable and accessible to that customer, which is what we're providing to the market. And so that's precisely what is going on. And all of our customers today, all of our growth isn't coming from like upstarts in the MSP space. They're all companies that are coming out of those environments. They're waiting till their contracts expire. In many cases, they're not even waiting for their contracts to expire. They're like, my cost of staying in this configuration is costing me more in productivity and everything else. I'm losing employees because they are tired of this platform, is awful to work with, and all these other things. So they're leaving even in advance of the expiration of these contracts and coming to Synchro because we're already taking them into the future of how this industry is operating anyway.
Michael, do you believe, is it safe to say that perhaps the last 10, starting with, again, I don't want to pick on anyone by name, so that the previous acquisitive mode of MSP tool platform growth through acquisition perhaps maybe or already is starting to be replaced with just do it organically? Because I'm sensing some comments from you that say, look, you can buy something, but you're still going to have to go through an immense effort even after you either go in debt or you give up your own cash to buy this thing. You're still going to have to integrate it. You're still going to have to do something. Otherwise, you just have bought a standalone product that doesn't have any integration benefit. Am I correct in picking that up from you? If I'm wrong,
Yeah. Well, look, I can't tell you what the strategy is of those other companies. They've only grown through acquisition over the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm not sure, there's a certain motion in there. And, there have been some acquisitions recently, by all of them. I mentioned Kaseya bought Axient in the backup space, Enable bought Adlumin. ConnectWise just announced Inky, right? They just made another acquisition, and I think those companies are largely going to have to acquire their way out of it because they're going to have to acquire innovation. Larger companies, I mean, Microsoft hasn't, or, not Microsoft, sorry, IBM is a company that I did business with many years ago, and they bought their way into innovation. They got too big and too lumbery, and I mean, innovation is not something that is often delivered from large companies that are straddled with all kinds of other areas of complexity. So, for any of those companies, I think they're going to largely have to buy their way. They're not going to be innovative. As I said, the only innovation we've seen has been commercial innovation, which is product and product pricing and packaging, not product and innovation. The market is really looking to companies like Synchro as the new innovators. We built and delivered our own XMM, our own Microsoft management tool from the ground up. We built and delivered our own cloud backup solution. That's very, very different. And that's very different. And we are designed and built to be highly innovative. We have the capital resources to do it because we don't have the debt structure that these other companies have. And I joined this company. I brought people like Dee Zeff with me. Dee ran products for us for all of our success at Continuum. We have Kristen Costaiola. She was number 2 in engineering at Datto during its heyday when they bought Autotask. She ran the PSA, she ran the RMM there, she ran a lot of the backup product. These are people that were in this industry and delivered the innovation that the industry was founded on and was so successful with that is now lost by the large players. And so the market, I mean, I get reach out day in and day out from companies, some that we knew of in the ConnectWise world, but many from the Kaseya and the Enables and even Ninjas and Halos and stuff that they're not getting the level of innovation, and they're certainly not getting this next generation platform from all the time. And so the next generation is going to come from the next generation. And so
that's really that's very interesting. I think that we're going to have plenty of conversation about that topic in the near future. I'd like to switch a little bit to profit margin. You and I spoke about this, and I heard it yet again from another source. It's not that I'm not prepared. I just don't like to call people out, for this data. But I'm hearing now from multiple sources these like single digit 10% gross profit margin amongst MSSPs. Like when I hear that, I think times are really tough. When you hear this type of stuff, assuming you are, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you sense that they're getting that type of a return on their company for that
Right.
service?
That is the challenge of this market. Again, back a little bit to what happened, what just happened. If you think about the, 2020 COVID and then the hyper expansion of this market, all the investment around your firewall and your internal infrastructure and all of that stuff. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's sent home. The internet became the new network, and everybody had to go out and invest in things around connectivity, communication, Zooms, right? All, Teams, all these other things, security, right? There's a whole new level that's required when all of your employees are working from home. So there was this hyper expansion in the market, bringing in lots of money, lots of players, and everything else. And so now there's a contraction taking place in the market. There's a feeding frenzy, right, of overly aggressive salespeople coming from all these different companies that have been from the vendor side, feeding these tools into the space. And so now that that's happening and taking place, you also have to pay attention to the fact that people went out and they bought a solution. Let's use security because it's one of the best examples. Look inside the tech stack of a $3 to $4 to $5 million MSP, 25 to 30 tools in there. 5 or 6 of them will be in security alone because this security product does 80% of what you needed, so it does this. So I bought this other one and it kind of overlaps, and so I've got some conflict in who owns the problem, and then I had to buy this thing. They've had to, like, have this sort of origami of solution to complete the waterfront of what they needed. So we have way too many tools. The tech stack is way too big and too complicated. It's costly because you have all those vendors, you have all those vendor relationships, you've got everything else that you're dealing with. And it was required because none of these solutions did what you needed in their entirety. And so, what we're delivering to the market in security in particular, but generally anyway, is a full end to end solution. The only thing we're not providing today is SOC services, but everything around what we call left of boom, as I'm sure you're familiar with, and right of boom for what we're doing in the cloud backup piece is our only piece of it, that we're doing today. So you've got to cover the entire waterfront. And we're doing that by standing up the Entra ID, Intune, Defender, and Sentinel that are inside of the Microsoft suite to get you that full stack from one vendor. And there isn't a single vendor, across the whole spectrum. And I respect them all. They're doing a beautiful job. Sophos and Huntress. And I mean, Sentinel. I mean, when I was at
Yeah.
Continuum, we partnered with Sentinel One. They did a great job for us. We had a SOC operation. And so it was a beautiful solution. But today, the attack vector, I mean, you see in our own report, some of the statistics, there was a Microsoft report that came out recently. I will send it to you at the conclusion of this to make it available to all of your listeners about the massive increase in attack vector of AI tools that are
Yeah.
driving bad actor behavior in the marketplace. How do you go compete against that? And the answer is, again, simplify the stack, get rid of the gaps, focus on a end-to-end solution. And in the land of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I mean, if you spend $10 on what you're doing to harden your environment, harden the tenant, protect your baseline, all of that stuff, you will avoid the tens of thousands of dollars you'll spend, the reputational value. The MSPs lose customers over cyber incidents more than any other thing. They'll tolerate certain things. That is the intolerable misfortune of an MSP, and they get traded out. So if we can perfect that environment, simplify the stack, reduce the operating costs, and perfect the cybersecurity environment as much as possible. There is no such thing as 100%, secure. I mean, it's just a fact. But boy, if you can narrow that window down to a very, very small sliver, it's a whole different thing. But the reason, back to your original question, they're not profitable is because they have 4 or 5 technologies in their security suite alone. They've got 25 or 30 in their broad tech stack.
Yeah.
It's costly from a vendor cost perspective, and it's costly from an operational perspective to the MSP, and they will never be profitable if they don't get out of that.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a personal thesis that which leads into my next question of where are the leads, where are the new customers for Synchro coming from? Back to the 2020 to 2025 today era of COVID and post COVID, my sense is I see a lot of what I would classify as a good old fashioned value added reseller, right? Going back 20, 25 years and seeing them crowded around a pen test as a service, an EDR tool, and a variety of other security tools, but they're not touching the tech stack. They're not dealing with Microsoft 365 or infrastructure or other types of monitoring. First of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, where are your customers coming from? Like, are they coming from the MSSP reseller sector trying to add technology management capabilities? Are they coming from legacy MSPs? Are they startup? Could you give us a sense of that?
They're the mass majority of them. We're serving all of those constituents. There are VARs that are trying to get more in the space. There are distributors that are getting a lot closer. PAX 8 changed that dynamic for everybody. So, as you can imagine, the Ingrams and the TD Synixes and the Also Clouds and the App Rivers of the world are trying to crouch in and get their share of that. They're the big CSPs for Microsoft, right? This is an important sector for them to preserve and to build on. But the mass majority of our customers are mid-size MSPs that are on, and I can name them again. I don't want to be here, and I'm not a vendor basher, but all the legacy providers that have done a nice job at one time being the innovators of this market that are no longer, and they're not serving the market properly. And none of them are providing like the Microsoft management capabilities and the unification and everything else that we're doing. And so 90+% of our customers today are leaving those environments, and they're coming to us to solve those very problems for them.
Okay. Yeah. Something tells me that at some point those MSSPs that had been so, I don't know, maligned or told that they're barely getting by at 8 to 10, 10, 15% margin, that at some point they're either going to be purchased by an MSP for their security capabilities, or they're going to evolve into a full-fledged MSP with all the technology capability that you're well aware of. AI, I'd like to everybody talks about AI. I feel like we've talked about it a lot, but your personal view of Synchro and how is it going to use AI, or how is it using AI, and what should the MSPs that I've talked to are hesitant to do anything other than use vendor tools like Synchro and adopt that AI capability, but they don't yet want to unleash AI to a customer unless it's just selling them, Copilot for Microsoft or ChatGPT or something like that. Well, your thoughts about that?
I'd be happy to put you in touch with some of our customers who are using the AI that we have released to them in the marketplace to get a different perspective, because many of them are working in, and the choice of words are just beautiful. I happen to have been trained in for flight. I had used to have both rotor and fixed wing flight. I was a pilot for both those crafts, and the concept of a pilot and a co-pilot are very relevant in this world. A co-pilot is somebody that's kind of got their hands on the wheel, but they're kind of watching and they're not really the piloting command. But at some point, when the instructor is feeling confident by the student, they say, you're in command, and the co-pilot becomes the pilot. And in that same way, in AI, MSPs are using it, going through, checking its work as it should, and then releasing it to the world. And that's happening in most cases today, across the board, and I think that's quite wise. So I think all of that is really largely yet to come. Our view on AI is a very, very clear. We have a very, very clear view of this. First of all, I don't think it's a wise place for MSPs themselves to be experimenting yet because it's costly. And I know you're quite familiar with Moore's Law, right? Jeffrey Moore, co-founder of Intel, that talked about the rate of change that would allow them to double the capacity of a chip in every 2 years. That was called Moore's Law. Well, the Moore's Law applied to AI is it is doubling every 7 months. This is moving so fast that so here you're talking about companies that are on the in the single digit of profitability. I mean, the last thing they can afford to do is to learn, try, buy, throw it away, learn, try. I mean, leave it to companies like ourselves to do that. We're funded for it. It's our job. We'll deliver it to the market and then go experiment. But boy, don't burn yourself out in the early stages. And we are still in the early stages of AI. As they say, it's going to be sort of overhyped for the first 2 years and underappreciated. But then once we get through this phase of it, I think the next decade behind it, we will not today have had a full appreciation for the real power of AI in the decade to come. So, and it's right in that very classic sort of evolution of all of these technological adoptions. We see it critical in two areas, and this is where we are investing heavily in. First of all, there is a science, and I spent the early part of my career more in sort of physics, electromechanical design, telemetry systems, and so forth. And there is a category called autonomic computing. And our aspiration and what we have really tasked our engineering teams with is to go and achieve a level of autonomic capabilities. This is a science of self healing. And if you think about it at the most rudimentary level, Charles, we have human beings repairing computers today, and computers are far better equipped to repair themselves than they are having a human do it. In fact, if you look at what a human does, when they get thing, they go to another computer to research, oh, what should I do? How should I do it? What did I do before? And everything else. Get the human out of that equation altogether. And autonomic computing is the ability to see a disk is compiling to, it's backing up, run a disk defrag. A printer fell offline. Should I have a customer call me to tell me that their printer's not? I should be able to scan the network, see that it's on, and put it back online. You look at like the human rate of getting a password, like missing their password. Do you really need to have somebody say, hey, I want to reset my password? Send it to them automatically, all on the rules and the policies that you're operating under. Those are all things you do not need IT specialists to do. So we are taking that out of the equation and we'll be providing now, again, autonomic computing, true self-healing is a very aspirational thing. And we are in the early stages of the asymptotic curve of delivery in that regard, but it's heading in that direction. And so we are working inside that Microsoft environment to have a level of, again, self-healing and, automatic function that humans were stuck sort of in the middle to do for whatever reason. And that's number one. And then on the other side of the equation, to help our partners help their customers become AI ready, because everybody's talking about, oh, I got to go do this and I got to do that. But a lot of times, like their data is not in a place or structured or meta tagged or dealt with in a way that, you can create an LLM or do something that's going to really make it very useful. So there's a lot of AI readiness that's required. And so the first stage is getting them to get their customers AI ready. And then the second is to seed the market. And there are, in the MSP space, there are 5 categories, vertical categories, where MSPs get a premium for servicing. It's not surprisingly financial services, healthcare, legal and professional, construction, and nonprofit. Those are 5 vertical markets that MSPs have always had about a 20% premium on delivering to. And so in those categories, just imagine delivering an agentic solution for the financial services industry And remember, we're in the SMB. We're not serving Fidelity. We're
Right.
serving like an investment advisory firm that uses Fidelity as a platform to help them bring a solution to their customer and say, this is what can make you better using AI. Do you like this? I'll make this available to you. And in many cases, they'll say, yes, that's exactly what I want to use. And in some cases, they'll say, not exactly, but if you can do that, can you make it do this? And the MSP is going to, our partners are going to say, yes, I can. And they'll use the tools, they'll use Copilot, build, modify, whatever, and serve it up to their customers. Our ultimate goal is to enable our partners to monetize those derivative products that they're making available by putting it into a agentic solutions cloud to make
Yeah.
it available to all of our partner community and allow each one of them to go and monetize their own solutions. It's very exciting. So, but two very different ends of the spectrum, right? One is at the
Sure.
technician productivity, like get rid of all this patterned, rote, routine work that's in your daily life to make me as a technician far more efficient and proficient and allow me to move up the ladder and work in more interesting things and projects and everything else. And then on the very other end of the spectrum, it's again having the MSP. I mean, that's who they're going to go to, as I said before, is the
Well,
customers are going to go to their MSP for these solutions.
so you asked my next question, which was going to be, do you believe that the MSP, as AI continues to evolve and becomes more functional and user ready, that rather than go direct and cut out the MSP, do you believe that there's a role for the MSP in that new economy?
Absolutely. And they're going to have to become that. And it's not as hard. It's daunting, standing at the precipice of this, literally abyss of tools and technology. And it's crazy right now. And it's blurring for people. It's going to settle down. But the answer is absolutely, emphatically yes. It's going to come from two places. The first is that MSP. And the ones that get there and start building a little bit of expertise and AI readiness and all of those things and start to engage in that language with your customer, right? First, because that's the first, sort of stage in it, like come to me for this. And
Yeah.
is the first part of it. And then the second part of it is that if you look in any of those industries I just mentioned, AI solutions will come from the core vendors on the ERP side, right? So if you're a dentist, you use, there's a 80, what is it, 86 or 87% market share chance they use Dentrix for their ERP. Dentrix is working on AI capabilities. You as the MSP better get smart about Dentrix. You probably do. There's a lot of application support
Sure.
in those vertical market segments. Fidelity as a IRA platform, they're going to be providing some level of it and as well. So those are the two places it's going to come from. The lawyer that's running that 22-person law firm is not going to, they're not going to go home and ask their children to go spin this up, from a programming class. I mean, it's going to come from the MSP and from the ERP vendors, and getting married up in that as the MSP is a part of the equation that we encourage and train on too.
One final question for you, Michael. I really appreciate you spending your busy day with us. First of all, I know we wanted to. You mentioned a little bit about your market study. Could we get a link? I'm assuming it's available to MSPs if they wanted to take a look at it. Could we get that to send out to people if they want
Absolutely.
to
Yeah,
view that?
please do. It was something that we did not just for ourselves or for our MSPs, but for the market in general. So we want to make that available to you. I mentioned also the Microsoft study on cybersecurity is fascinating. It is recently released. But yes, these are things we want to make available. We also, Kristen Castaiola, our CTO, is producing a paper that will get out to the market as well. It's sort of our gift to the channel, and it's about, here's some of the ways you should be thinking about AI. Here's some of the tools that you should be thinking about and all of that, just to help people, you know, gather themselves around, again, the dizzying announcements, releases, and everything else that's taking place out there. We want the
Yeah.
market to be smart, to get smart, and to be properly educated and trained around this stuff.
Um, so the final question, just you know, I like to get the tempo or the pulse of where you think we are in terms of the market. How do you feel about the managed services profession today as we sit in Q4 of 2025 going into what we're looking at huge growth again, right? Gartner and all the other analyst firms projecting a lot of money coming the way of the IT channel. How do you feel about how we're doing in the MSP sector?
Well, I think all of that is true. I think the opportunity has gotten exponentially greater. I am very sympathetic and empathetic to the MSP because the challenge has also gotten not only greater because of that opportunity, but because of the dynamic we talked about earlier, which is the number of tools in their stack is unruly, unmanageable, unaffordable. That's what's killing their profitability, not just the cost of the tool, it's really the operating cost of working with all those different tools. So again, we're in the business of helping people reduce their stack, reduce the complexity of their business operation, and increase the productivity of their employees and improving the lives of the employees. The turnover in this industry has gone up considerably for so many MSPs, and then going out and
Yeah.
trying to for somebody new, bring them in, retrain them on your stack and all that stuff. It's very difficult. So I am incredibly empathetic to the channel. I think it is very difficult right now. It's difficult to have been profitable. If you don't have profits, you don't have growth. And the last thing you want to do when you're upside down economically is to make it up in volume, as the old saying goes. You don't want to do that. You need to get profitable first and then scale. And you won't have the funds, you won't have the resources to scale anyway if you don't. So it's really about reducing the tech stack, creating simplicity in and around your operating modality, and then getting profitable, and then using some of those profits to grow, but grow profitably. Be disciplined, keep your tech stack low, and everything else. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of wood to chop in this space to get there, but they will. They will. They're smart. The MSP channel is smart. These people are all, they're slaves to reason, logic, other technical. They get a little allured by the shiny new thing over
Yeah.
here, all that stuff. Those days are gone. It's like get practical, get real, and get disciplined about the very measures that we talked about.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think they absolutely can resolve these issues. Michael, I always learn something when I talk to you, and I very much appreciate it. You have a very unique perspective on this industry, and yeah, I hope everyone listening to this is going to feel the same way. Michael George, CEO of Synchro. Hope you come back on the program and share your wisdom with us in the near future.
Well, you're kind and generous to say that. I'd be delighted to come back anytime. And again, I just want to leave everyone with a thought. I said it earlier, but I want to say it again because I think it's super important to pay attention to, which is innovation is really what people are really demanding is innovation from this market. And what they really mean is we need the next generation platform for this market. And the next generation platform is going to come from the next generation of vendors. So go look there
Well said.
and look here.
Michael, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Charles, thanks so much.